Good morning. Welcome, everybody, wherever you're connecting from this morning. You've successfully joined us for this HOOP Urban Circular Bioeconomy webinar. My name's James Ling. I'm working for Greenovate Europe in Brussels. We're a not-for-profit network for sustainable innovation, and we're proud to be the dissemination partner in the HOOP project. HOOP is a Horizon 2020 project that's working to foster innovation in the urban bioeconomy. The project is actually ending in a few months, so this webinar series has been put on to share some of the main findings, the main results. And as you can see, we're actually reached the final edition of this series. So four webinars we've had this month in the month of May, and today's topic is engaging stakeholders for the urban bioeconomy. So before we start, just to mention sort of the house rules for the webinar. So the webinar is being recorded. The recording and the slides are going to be shared with all the registered participants. As attendees, you're in listen-only mode, but we really want to have your questions. We also have a poll coming up, so don't be shy with your questions. We have time set aside at the end of the webinar to answer all of them and have a discussion. So please, if something comes to mind, please drop it in the Q&A box. So with that, I think we're ready to start. As I said, the topic today is about stakeholder engagement. It's a topic that's come up across the whole series, the importance of it for all of the work within HOOP. So I think it's really exciting, all of the learnings we're going to have today. So we have three very talented speakers, as you can see on screen here. And without further ado, I'll hand over to our first pairing, which is Mariana Nicolau and Felix Schumacher from the CSCP. So when you guys are ready, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, James, for the great introduction. Yes, welcome also from my side. As James mentioned, my name is Felix Schumacher. I'm working at the CSCP, and we are the lead partner on the stakeholder engagement in the HOOP project. And before I dive into all the great work that has been carried out in the project itself, I would like to start with a quick poll for you, for the audience, just asking which format, as I call it here, would you consider the most impactful for your everyday work? So the topics that you are working on. Out of all the options that are listed here, if you were to engage your stakeholders, which of these formats would you prefer to use and to reach your stakeholders? And maybe we can take a few seconds to receive the answers. And don't worry, the question is not about representative, it doesn't need to be representative or anything like this. It's more like a short way for me to see where your interests are lying. And I hope we can move to the results soon so we can see. I don't see who has voted yet and who hasn't.
Yeah, the votes are still coming in. I'll give it, yeah, we've had a minute now, so I'll end the poll and we'll look at the results.
Great, thanks a lot, James. So, okay, I see that there's a lot of interest, especially for the hands-on formats and the field trips. So really going into a place where you can feel and touch things and really also create something on your own, which is great because during the presentation that I'm about to start, we will also obviously dive deeper into these topics then. So thanks a lot for your participation. I believe you can now see my screen. Before I start with the contents, maybe a quick introduction of myself and my colleague Mariana. So we both work at the CSCP, as I mentioned, responsible for the stakeholder engagement in the project. We also have Klube and Science for Change, who will present after us, two more partners responsible for the stakeholder engagement, and of course all the lighthouses, which I will get to in a second. Yeah, I've been in the project from the very beginning, so I'm very happy to see all the great results and all the great progress that happened in the project. And Mariana joined recently, but she's an expert on behavior change and sustainable lifestyles. And she will dive a bit deeper into the topic of engaging citizens towards the end of our presentation. So stakeholder engagement in HOOP, basically, as James already mentioned in his introduction, the project really is about finding new ways to valorize biowaste for new progressing the urban bioeconomy. And we are doing this in the project in the total of 8 lighthouses. I also saw already in the audience that at least some of them are also here themselves, which is also great to see. And these lighthouses, they are all spread throughout Europe. In some cases it's cities, in other cases it's also more on a regional level. And given that creating new bio-based products, for example, is really about creating also new value chains. Obviously, along a value chain there are many actors, and in the circular economy, the stakeholders from citizens to producers, so the consumer and the production side, and everything in between, and also the regulatory side. All these stakeholders play a vital role, and for this purpose, to really engage all these stakeholders in the project, we created this format called the Biowaste Clubs, which really can mean anything, as I'm about to show you in the main content part of the presentation. But the Biowaste Club really is the format that was used in all these 8 lighthouse cities and regions, and is still being used until the end of the project. It's a very flexible concept in which basically the goal is to bring the right stakeholders on board in the right format to talk about the topics that are of interest. So how this can look in practice, we had tons of formats and a lot of Biowaste Club meetings, as we call them, in the project. And as you can imagine from the poll, I'm also going to use the same structure and examples that we had there. And the first one, and I think also the one with the most interest, were the field trips. This is a great concept that worked in the project, and all the credit, of course, goes to Lighthouses for being the main organizers of this. And we had several Biowaste Club meetings and also other formats in which we really went into the field. So in our consortium, mostly internally, but also including some external stakeholders, we organized this Münster and Almere study tour. If you remember the map on the previous slide, the 2 lighthouses of Münster and Almere in Germany and in the Netherlands are about 2.5 hours away from each other. And then in the consortium, we figured that organizing a study tour to really dive deep into the work that is being done there, really look at the facilities, really have time for discussions also between all the sessions, during the sessions, would be valuable. So we organized this study tour in the project, which was a great success, and is also something where we can really see that organizing field trips is really worth it. Another example I can talk a bit about, since I was also involved there, luckily, was our very first Biowaste Club meeting in the Lighthouse of Bergen. It started off in the morning in a conference room in a hotel where we had presentations and discussions and everything you would expect from a meeting, and then in the afternoon, and this is what really made it a special meeting. A lot of the participants who still had time walked throughout the city and visited several sites in the city. So we visited a research facility working on algae-based products. So this is the picture that we see on top here of the slide on the right-hand side. So they're working really on creating new products out of algae, so new bio-based products, so something that's really at the heart of HOOP. And we also visited a museum that had an exhibition on circular economy, and was very interactive, very playful, and some other things throughout the city. And this was also a big success because the stakeholders could really see what is going on in the city and how it really looks like in practice, and not only talk about it. Then the second the second format I want to focus on, and I also saw a lot of interest on this in the poll, is really hands-on workshops. And we also have several very interesting examples in the projects on this. And we can also see with these examples that this can take a really big range. So in our lighthouse in Western Macedonia, there was a big environmental week organized, so lots of awareness raising activities. And one of these activities was to create basically paint or colors made out of vegetable waste. So really turning the waste into something useful, and then having children, having kids, really create something tangible out of this drawing, and really understanding also where the color can come from. So really something hands-on. But hands-on can also mean to really take the rock and roll approach, basically, and to really have sparks flying around and really build something. And this was also, it may not look like it's bio-waste related, but in Münster, there was also a workshop organized in the project where the participants really built these ovens in which they can produce their own biochar. This was together with a local initiative, and this was also a huge success because now these ovens are spread throughout the city and also doing more engagement work on their own, basically, because it's an interesting concept, something really tangible, and really a great way also to engage stakeholders this way during the workshop and also afterwards. So again, it's really about creativity, really creating something hands-on, and I think a lot of fun for everyone who was involved, both for the organizers and also for the participants. Then, of course, there was tons of interactive meetings in the project. I just picked 2 examples, and here I really want to point out that often you can already tell by the layout of the room what kind of meeting you will see. So in this case, you can see the tables are all set up in a way that people face each other, that they can really discuss. And this basically took place in all the lighthouses, in many cases also several times. So people really understand, talking to each other, trying to find solutions together, co-create. The outputs are more like digital or paper-based and not so much hands-on, tangible like in the previous example. This is also why we have this differentiation here. But yeah, it's really also a concept and a format that I think everyone knows, and it's also very proven in terms of engaging stakeholders. Then coming to probably the least flashy example of this presentation, but also something that really also worked throughout HOOP and also can't be disregarded in terms of engaging stakeholders for the circular bioeconomy, is also more formal settings. So really, also having presentations, maybe technical presentations, sometimes really high-level speakers, also high-level participants can be covered by this because they're used to these kinds of formats. So this also doesn't need much explanation, but also played a role in HOOP, and especially in the case of Porto, I also know that this was combined with also other more fun formats. So this is also always a way to engage stakeholders, to combine different formats depending on the audience, depending on the purpose. But even though it may not be as fun and as interactive, it still is an important concept for engaging your stakeholders. Then we have this great example from our lighthouse in Bergen, who organized their own conference, basically. So really organizing their own conference, and I think they reached, with this specific example, it took place in spring this year, I think almost 140 participants, and it's a great example of how a high effort can be very rewarding, basically, by really taking up the challenge of organizing your own conference. And in this way, they managed to bring in stakeholders from all over the country, from all of Norway, really deep dive into the topics, really take the time and discuss, for example, investments into startups who really can help with the circular bioeconomy topics in Bergen and also beyond. And it's just an amazing example, a great result, and hats off to the colleagues in Bergen for organizing their own conference, which of course is not feasible everywhere, but in some cases and in a project like this can also be a great way to engage stakeholders. Speaking of conferences, another way to leverage them is to create a side event at conferences, which has, of course, the advantage that the effort is much lower. And like the organization in many ways is not as big. So on the left-hand side on the slide, you can see that our colleagues in Münster, they leveraged like a conference that was called Circular Economy Days in the city. They just had an exhibition booth, which I think is, we didn't count this as a biowaste club, but I still want to mention it because, of course, this is also a way to reach stakeholders, and also stakeholders you may not have on your radar, to really share information. But I really want to focus on the other example that is from the lighthouse in Albano Laziale in Italy, where they organized, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name, my Italian is basically non-existent, but they organized a training camp that was aimed at like public administration. So this training camp took place anyway, and what our colleagues did there, they basically hosted a session during this training camp. So the advantage here was basically that all these stakeholders, this very specific group, public administration, was already in one place, having this training, this conference, so to speak. So you don't need to organize something on your own, where you try to get them all together again. And this was done in a great way, and this also another way to have very also specific or targeted stakeholder engagement in cases like this. But this can also be any conference. A side event can also be a great way. Then obviously the project also hosted a lot of webinars, which especially during the pandemic, when the project really kicked off, was relevant. No need to really explain here, but I also want to highlight that this can also be very interactive and colorful, as you see in some of the screenshots. And also that a webinar can also be a great way to be really spatially inclusive, because if you have actors from all over the country, for example, it's much easier to organize a webinar if you really want to kick things off. And basically all our lighthouses also worked on this, and I just picked a few examples. So it's also a great way, and even after the pandemic, it still brings a lot of value to the project. Last but not least, from all these examples, I want to also mention the exhibitions. So the Porto one I already mentioned. So this was combined with other efforts, and this exhibition is a bit more technical. So the picture on the very right shows bio-based products. So for example, biochar, biocomposites, so something that could hit the market at any time, and basically also what the project worked a lot on. But it can also be a bit more this creative approach, where you don't really understand what you are looking at in the first moment, like in the Murcia Biowaste Club, and also maybe something self-made, like we have in the action weeks in Western Macedonia on the picture here. So again, it can take many shapes, many forms, and it has also a lot of advantages. It's very activating. It makes people think outside of the box, and in Hoop we also had a lot of great examples of exhibitions playing in a role in basically engaging the stakeholders. And this wraps up this part of the presentation, but now I want to hand over to my colleague Mariana, who will give us a deep dive on the topic of citizen engagement, to also help you understand this topic a bit better. So over to Mariana.
Many thanks, Felix. Thank you. I hope you guys can hear me well, also see me. My name is Mariana Nicolau. As said before, I'm a colleague of Felix at the CSCP, the Collaborating Center on Sustainable Consumption and Production. And over the past, I think over 10 years or so, engaging people with more sustainable behaviors. So the citizen engagement part of our work has been the main focus of my, let's say, passion and dedication. And so we thought within the universe of stakeholder engagement that we would zoom in a little bit further into the citizen part, or changing the behavior of people. And so I think we can go next, Felix, to the next slide. My purpose is to first bring to your attention why to engage people at all with more circular bioeconomy solutions, for example. So why to bother in the first place? Well, because we have very good reasons that it is essential, indispensable to engage people. They are not just a nice to have in our work, they are crucial for making more circular bioeconomy solutions to happen and thrive and be really taken up by most people out there. So firstly, I brought here numbers from the IPCC report from 2022, where it said that 40 to 70% of all global greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 could be saved through demand-side only interventions. Demand-side meaning interventions or solutions focusing specifically on people, in other words, fostering also the right behaviors and actions among people in order to reduce or to achieve our goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions until then. So not a small piece of it, but really the heart of it would come or could potentially come by engaging people. And this has many advantages. For example, also being more low-cost initiatives, less reliable only on technologies, and having a great impact in our goals. I think we can go to the next one, Felix. Another why that is important is that it's increasingly recognized that we depend on this social engagement piece, on this changing people's behavior in order to really have more successful circular business models, circular policy solutions, bioproducts, and so on. Because at some point, people need to choose our product, engage with our service, use it, turn it a habit. So eventually, this is going to be crucial for those solutions, as I said, to thrive. So for different reasons, it is very important. It's one of our key stakeholders, people, for us to consider and engage in our project solutions, business models, policies, and so on. Nevertheless, although they are a key piece of our puzzle, we often make huge mistakes when trying to engage people. And I would say that's what happens in most initiatives out there, in most sustainable circular engagement initiatives out there, fail to really get people on board for, I think, a group of key reasons that I call here misconceptions. Maybe mistakes are it's too hard of a word, so maybe misconception or the wrong framing of our challenge, actually. The first one, and probably I think the main one, is that we tend to believe that rationality guides people out there, that rationality is the main, let's say, decision-making piece of the puzzle in people's brains to get them to action. That people have the ability to balance pros and cons in every decision they take, in every product they buy, in every or every service they buy, or every activity they do. And so as a consequence of that, and that's the second misconception, if we give them information about it, if people know what is expected from them, what's the right thing to do, or the circular sustainable thing to do, that they would naturally choose it and engage with it. However, that's also a misconception, because it's, well, more and more understood that people most of the time decide in a more irrational way, meaning led by emotions, by habits, by an autopilot, where then information-based tools are not always effective or are not the only support people need in order to behave differently or accept our bioproducts or engage with recycling, with composting, with separating the waste, and so on and so forth. And as a third consequence of that, or a third misconception, then we might get frustrated if people don't engage with us with these strategies or more rational strategies, and we might tend to think people are lazy, behaviors are never going to change, it's so hard to engage people. But I would see this more as a consequence of a wrong strategy to really engage people out there. But there is hope. Actually, there is evidence that it can and should be different. So I think we can go to the next one, Felix. Current behavioral models are becoming more and more popular, more and more sophisticated, supported by actual evidence of how we can really change people's behaviors. And they tend to break people's behaviors into three pillars. So I bring these three pillars to you because I think if we hear those questions, what really takes for a behavior to happen or to change, we might get new ideas of what people really need and how can I actually effectively engage them at the end of the day with our circular economy work. First, do people want to do this circular, sustainable thing that we want them to do, this activity, this product buying, this engagement? In other words, and I think we can click, Felix, is there motivation for people to engage with us? No? And that's an important pillar. We tend to focus only on the rational motivation and people understanding and wanting to do things, but motivation also includes our emotions, our experiences, things that we acquired through the relationship with our family, with our religion, with our school, so our values, our intentions. There are many things within this motivation pot that we can tap onto besides only the rational part of the story. Secondly, can people do this thing? So we tend to assume it's so easy. Why don't people just separate the waste? Why don't people just use that product? Why don't people? But sometimes it's hard. We can think for ourselves. Sometimes we want to do something and we don't manage to put it into practice because the actual capability is not there, or ability to do the thing is not there. So the ability question is very crucial and often overlooked. So that's why I also thought very interesting that Felix brought elements like hands-on workshops as formats from Hoop that really sparked engagement and change among stakeholders, because indeed, when you learn something firsthand, this makes the whole transformation or behavior change easier. And then finally, is there support out there for people to do this thing now? And when we talk about support, then we are talking about opportunity. And opportunity from two perspectives mainly. One, physical opportunity in terms of infrastructure. Do I have the support from my contacts, from my environment out there to help me? But also, do I have social support? Are people against that new product, that change? People in my family, my work environment, in my school, in the public realm, or are they against, or are they for it? And the more they're against it, the harder it is for people to change. So those are pillars that help us getting closer to reality, to what behaviors really need in order to happen, so that we can effectively engage citizens and get more creative ideas on these formats, on how to really get them on board. And then before I close, I would then bring, I think we can go next, concrete examples then of engagement tools that can help us get there, that helps us tapping into what really takes for people to change. For example, gamification, targeted information on what people really need, capacity building, nudging, social norms, choice editing. Those are all names of tested and proved tools that are behavioral tools, more and more available out there, also for our topics of circular economy, sustainability, bioeconomy. And I'm very happy also to connect this to the work that has been done through Hoop, because many of those examples were already successfully tested to engage citizens throughout the project. For example, as you already see there, the Hoop Trainers app, which is going to soon be presented by our colleague Rosa, as an example of how gamification or playing or fun can be a really entry point and instrument for us to engage people with new behaviors, products, and services. Another example, and then I think we can click next, is the aspect of capacity building or generating skills. And this also happened through the project, for example, through workshops where people build things with their hands. And so learned not only in theory, but in practice, how to implement, in this case, the creation of ovens in order to easily produce biochar at home. And then finally, if you click one more time, I think social norms as a tool, in other words, fostering a new normal, normalizing desired behaviors was also present. For example, when we see environmental actions at schools in Western Macedonia, where kids then had the opportunity to experience, play with more sustainable circular topics, and this becoming more, and I think, normal for them, and them also being messengers to engage maybe their parents, their friends, their family with the topic. So with that, I close my piece. I hope I had the opportunity to bring, I think, ideas of what we shouldn't do, but also what we can do to effectively engage people with the circular bioeconomy. And I hand it over to Felix for wrapping up our piece.
Thanks a lot, Mariana, and sorry for clicking a bit too early or too late here and there.
That's perfect.
You're fine. Yes, so to conclude maybe our presentation, let me see. Somehow the clicking doesn't work now. Okay, now it does. Yeah, so in general, I think the message from our side is that there's really no one-size-fits-it-all approach. And I think, yeah, many ways to engage your stakeholders and also your citizens, and also maybe what Mariana just said, to really take this, to take these learnings also from the theoretical point of view first, and then design your actions based on this. And I think on a methodological level, there are several ways, also that in the HOOP projects, some steps that were repeated in most of the formats. But content-wise, it's really, really open, and there are many, many things everyone can do in engaging stakeholders. And last but not least, I also want to highlight that impact is really manifold. Impact can take many shapes depending on the stakeholders, and I don't want to be the judge of what is more impactful. If you engage, for example, 2 policymakers, or if you engage 200 children, I wouldn't be able to tell you what is more impactful, because obviously also the impact takes a lot of time. But nevertheless, the key is really to bring your stakeholders together, to talk to them, and to get all the opinions and insights, and to co-create the solutions. And obviously, this was a very quick sneak peek, and I hope that many of you in the audience are registered for the conference, HOOP conference next week on policy and cities, because especially on the second day, the Cities Day, we will also take another deeper dive into the stakeholder engagement topic in the project, and I will be there. Many of the Lighthouse will be there. So yeah, even if you have more interest, then feel free to approach us to join our sessions. We are very happy to see as many people as possible also there. And last but not least, I also want to highlight that for all the details about what has happened, but also maybe some templates, some frameworks on how to engage stakeholders, there's also tons of materials in the HOOP project, and also in the Circular project, which is connected to HOOP, and where we already had the biowaste club concept, where you can read up on all of this basically. So yeah, just to wrap it up and show you where you can find more information. And looking at the time, I think we overshot our goal a little bit, but I think I can hand it back to James now. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thanks so much to both of you, Mariana and Felix. So many learnings, so many insights. Really, really interesting. If anybody in the audience has questions for Felix or Mariana, they're going to hang around, and we're going to gather some questions and answer them at the end of the webinar. So please put your questions in the Q&A. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer them. So with that, I'm going to hand over to our second speaker, who is Rosa Arias from Science for Change. And when you're ready, you can get started. Thank you, Rosa.
Thank you, James. Just let me share my screen. Okay, here. I think that you can see it now.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I will try to explain you what we did as this funny part of stakeholder engagement in HOOP, which was the development or the co-design of the HOOP Trainers app as a citizen science tool for urban bioeconomy. Just 1 second, I need to change this. Okay. Here. So I want to explain who we are. We are a small company based in Barcelona, in a second. How we relate all these actions to the HOOP objectives in relation to citizen science, which is what we do, and all the aspects about the app, the co-design process to develop the missions, the results we got, and what's next, and how you can join also. So, as I was mentioning, we are a small company based in Barcelona, a knowledge-based social enterprise promoting collaborative research, evidence-informed public policies, and quality science communication. We like to co-create everything and to engage citizens in everything that we do in many different ways. And I will show you just one. These are our values. I will not extend on this, but we love creativity, collaboration, sustainability, and to have a positive impact on society while being inclusive and also generating new knowledge. And this is what we try to do. We were born in 2019 and out of a European project. So this is quite a funny story. So we are not a typical company, but we were created to exploit the results of a project that was called Denosis, that was investigating and applying citizen science for monitoring odor pollution, which in fact is quite related to waste. Now we are involved in several European projects. This is our team, very interdisciplinary, because you need to have the like the hard sciences or traditional ones, and also the social sciences are very important for achieving these stakeholder engagement goals. And what we did in HOOP in relation to citizen science. Of course, we in overall in the project, we were addressing this type of challenges, trying to reduce waste and to increase or boost this urban circular bioeconomy. And we wanted, of course, to raise awareness, also contribute to increase the recycling of urban biowaste and wastewater, which in many cases is maybe just the percentages are not raising anymore for years. This happens in many cities, or they are trying to implement new ways of separation or new sorting systems or fractions of waste. So this is something that cannot, it's a continuous effort, I would say. And we wanted also to deliver these sustainable circular bio-based economy investments throughout the project, create this European network of citizens and regions that I will show you at the end, in case that you want to join, and contribute to creation of green jobs, of course. And how we approach this, we love doing citizen science. So this is how we did it in the HOOP project, to gather more data and to involve deeply the citizens in the process, because when citizens start collecting data, this is a way of pushing these behavioral changes that Felix and Mariana were mentioning, because this active engagement in the process makes them reflect, think, and see, in fact, the numbers, how are they contributing, or the qualitative data that they are gathering, so that they can also reflect and change their decision making, for example. So we were supporting all the lighthouse cities in HOOPs to implement these circular bioeconomy solutions through these collaborative spaces, the biowaste clubs, as you know, and we specifically co-designed with them this app to efficiently identify and foster efficient sorting, collection, and recycling in the different cities according to their baseline, so the current situations they have and the way they wanted to go. So we use a lot of stakeholder engagement, as Felix explained, through the biowaste clubs, and also targeting the quadruple helix. This was very important as well. So we gather all the stakeholders together. And in our case, we co-designed the HOOP trainers also through the biowaste club sessions and workshops. So what we did, what is this app about? You can see these two funny avatars, and I will explain more details in a second. And we try to get a bit creative to align with these goals. So the app is helping us to achieve this goal. So align innovative waste bio-based processes and public policies with societal needs to increase also the acceptance of the bioproducts, increase the knowledge on bio-waste, address misinformation, because in waste, you know that there are many, I mean, we all are the first ones sorting the waste at our homes. So we all have opinions. Some of them are true, some are not. So it's a way of contrasting and making people reflect on what they know, what they don't know, etc. Also fostering awareness, pushing these behavioral changes, being more transparent and increasing trust and acceptability, while increasing science literacy and critical thinking of the citizens involved. So we use a co-design process to create all this app that I will show you in these phases: emphasization, definition, ideation, prototype, and testing. In two of them, the definition phase and the ideation phase, we included co-design sessions that we did targeted in the different lighthouse cities. And then in the last phase, we incorporate also citizens to gather their views on the app. Basically, this is what we did throughout our journey to co-design and test the app. First, we have available information on the different cities, so we analyze it. We did these workshops on each one of the lighthouse cities to apply this co-design process that I just showed you, to identify the needs that can be covered by citizen science. So what cities, the different cities need, so that we can emphasize that in the app. app. Then we co-design also the different parts of the app with quadruple helix stakeholders, not only with the cities, but with everybody else. Then we developed the tool, of course. We adapt it to each context because each city is different. We implement it. So we gather people to use the app and collect the data, and then we analyze the results, and we have the final reports that, in fact, you can find them in the library that Felix just showed just before. So this was the kind of co-design process and the workshops that we did. We had 10 co-design sessions with the cities and the technical partners to conceptualize the app using this co-design or design thinking methodology. So we, at the end, had 8 different versions for the app adapted to each need of each city. In total, almost 1,500 participants. We did this through the biowaste clubs, and at the end, when we had all the results, we also did some workshops to involve citizens to produce or co-produce improvement proposals and policy recommendations to address the local challenges. So what we did, what is this app about? We used this gamification, and the overall goal was to transform this avatar, the Dubio, which is represented like the linear economy, into the circle, which is representing the circular economy, and is the final goal of the trip throughout the app. To do that, we created 3 missions. The first mission was to sort different types of waste into different bins. Then we have a dialogue with neighbors, and then we, at the end, when everything was set in place, people need to select a kind of bioproduct that they wanted to produce out of the waste that they have collected. So in just a little more detail on how the missions work, the first one may seem simple because people just need to classify different types of wastes in different types of bins, which this was different for different cities, as you can understand, because the colors are different, the number of bins are also different, or the sorting, the fractions of the waste are also different. So we adapted this. And even though it seems quite simple, the results I will show you later were quite funny, because for some ways is almost many people were making a lot of mistakes to sort them. And also it's the first step to start reflecting how you do your recycling at home. Are you doing this right? Are you using all the bins or not? So this is like a kind of reflection, pushing a reflection at the individual level. So for the second mission, once that they have this reflection done, it's time to go towards the collective level. So what we wanted for them is to think that they are not alone. So this is a collective effort. We all need to have our sorting at home and contribute to these recycling strategies. So we were sending the citizens to talk to different neighbors that had different perspectives on recycling, how important it is, what are the motivations, the drivers, the barriers. Some of them were in favor, some not so much. So the idea was to gather this data also on the motivations of the person that was participating using the app, but also in contrast with other opinions of their neighbors. So the type of questions were like, why do I recycle, for example? So to reduce the environmental impact of my waste, to transform my waste into useful products, or to pay less taxes, or to have my city more beautiful. So we had a lot of options there. And then once we have reflected at the individual and the collective level, we have the final mission. We gave them different options of bioproducts that we are actually producing in Hoop, so that they understand what are they used for, and they can select like the best option in their opinion to be produced in their city. So this was the last part, and also a small valoration of the participation. So the main results. Many citizens seem unfamiliar with the concept of circular economy. So maybe we think that it's widespread, but not so much. There is also a need to translate complex or academic terminology into accessible language, and this is something that you can easily achieve with this type of tools using gamification. Also, it helps citizens to better understand this terminology and make them understand how they can contribute. And for example, I will show you very quickly the results for Murcia, where we have 263 users, as you can see here. And for example, in Mission 1, for the classification, are the results of the classification of the different types of waste in the different bins. And you see that Cork, 74% of the participants didn't have it right. Diapers was another tricky one, or egg cups. So this is starting to raise awareness. Then we have the missions. So we understand the mission 2. The key motivations in this case was reduce the environmental impact of waste in 63.6% of the cases. Then the primary obstacle was the lack of information. The channels that they obtain information from mainly were social networks. This is quite important as well, so that also related to this misinformation that I was talking about earlier, or to promote information and to give them feedback. And then the areas in which municipalities can prioritize is the incentivize motivation and promote environmental education, since this is not so trivial. And then in relation to the products, they selected bioplastics and fertilizers as the main ones. And this was the results. So what's next? Now we have all the results there in the reports that you can find in the library. But as you know, in the HOOP, we created this huge network of follower cities. So that I think that you, if interested, you are still on time to join. So this type of tool is adaptable to any city. It can be replicated to improve sorting, waste systems, and promote urban circular bioeconomy elsewhere. It helps to raise awareness and decrease the waste production, which is very important, and also fosters the bio-waste market, so the acceptability of the final products. That was one of our goals. So it is really replicable, and we also produce some national action guidelines for these cities or others to promote uptake and replicability. To do this, I will be very brief, but you can also find this information in another deliverable there in the library. We created a guidelines, a kind of action plan for the citizens that want to replicate this type of initiatives to promote this urban circular bioeconomy. So this could be like the main steps: assess your baseline situation, engage your stakeholders, boost this bio-waste prevention and collection through citizen engagement, identify ways and design ways to valorize bio-waste, and find funding for your bio-waste products. So very, very briefly, after this analysis of the results of the training, HOOP Trainers app, and also the workshops on policy, we gathered these few policy recommendations just for you to know that are very important to get to know your territory first. So this baseline and assessment is very, very important to start with. Then you need to identify and engage your stakeholders using any of the strategies that we discussed today. Then prevention is very important. So if you can avoid the waste, then you don't need to treat them. And then finding the right technologies, also considering the available feedstock and the match with the local environmental strategies, objectives, and economic implications is really important, because if not, you will produce like a bioproduct that you don't have, then you cannot put on the market. And it's also very important, this mutual learning and understanding the success factors for others and what can help you in this journey. So if you want to know more, just drop us a line, and you can become also a HOOP trainer. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much, and I'm open to any question.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Super interesting and innovative work that you guys have done within the project. I'll invite Mariana and Felix back. We've got not so much time, but a little bit of time to answer a few questions. So firstly, I'm going to answer a question, because there was a question in the chat if it's possible to join our conference next week online. And the short answer is no. It's an in-person conference. After all of these online events, we want to have something really in person together. So no, there's unfortunately no option to join online. But we will have more events still that you can join, which I'm going to mention at the end of the webinar. Going to questions for our speakers, a question towards the CSCP colleagues. So we have a question, is it possible to mentor or develop biowaste clubs? The question comes from Uganda, but it's could be asked from anywhere. So if people watching are interested to start their own biowaste club or similar, what would you advise?
That's a very interesting question. So thank you for posing this question, Joshua. Yeah, first of all, I mean the concept really does work everywhere, I believe, as it's very flexible and adaptable. Unfortunately, we have not foreseen this directly in the project to really have this replication also outside of Europe. I believe the network that Rosa just mentioned is really focused around Europe. But nevertheless, yeah, the way James phrased the question, so I think there are several starting points. I think really, yeah, looking at the methodology and looking at all these steps that we have done this in several projects now. So to start with assessing, doing baseline assessments, doing stakeholder mappings, really thinking about who are the stakeholders that you want to bring on board, and also what are their needs, what do they, how can you attract them also to participate, how important are they for to reach your goals, and all of these steps, I think should be applicable everywhere. Of course, local conditions change from country to country, from city to city, from stakeholder to stakeholder, and I think this we have also already seen in the project that also each country, each lighthouse has a different approach, and this is also fine, of course, and you probably know best what works in your country, but nevertheless, I think the methodology in general, yeah, this can definitely work everywhere, and taking a look at this is a good first step. And in general, I think there are also, of course, similar funding programs aimed at Africa. So could also be interesting in the future to take a look at these funding programs and see if there's also space to implement yeah, waste clubs, biowaste clubs, or whatever similar formats, maybe also with a partnership, mentorship, whatever. It's also definitely a possibility, but unfortunately I don't have any concrete ideas. I don't know if anyone wants to add.
Well, I know you guys created already some documentation which people can use to help their journey on that. And otherwise, I guess they can contact you if they want more advice or if they have some specific requests for services. We'll move on because, like I said, we're a bit short on time. So a question coming for Rosa about the potential to extend the app to, for example, industry use where there's similar levels of ignorance according to biowaste and biowaste-based materials, according to our questioner, Roy. So, Rosa, I don't know what you think about that.
Yes, thank you, Roy, for the question. I think that this is straightforward. Of course, it can be replicable because we use this co-design process. So for the objectives you have, for the stakeholders you are targeting, in this case, we were like matching like the city interest with the citizens living in that city. But for example, to engage with the industry, we can do the same, but involving the industry. The app is quite adaptable. I mean, we can translate it into different languages, change the missions, change the questions, change the bio products at the end, for example, or the information according to that. We can also include more information on industrial processes, which I think it's also very, very important. For example, when we are working with the smells from many different waste installations. Citizens are usually quite concerned on health issues, for example, and when you explain them, like how is the process going, what is being produced, and also when they participate, they get this sense of co-responsibility, because we are all generating the waste or the wastewater, so someone needs to treat them. So at the end, you generate this dialogue, and you can introduce all this information also through the workshops or the co-design sessions, or even in the app. So yeah, the possibility is there, and yeah, if you want to know more, just I will write my my email on the chat. Thank you.
Very good. I have another question come in, which I think could be answered by any or all of you, and it's about successes in engaging people from different age groups. How successful were you, or not? And do you have sort of suggestions or strategies to reach certain age groups? I saw it was mentioned briefly in Rosa's presentation, some of the figures from the different cities. And I'm sure Felix and Mariana also have some insights on that. So I don't know who wants to, if someone wants to wave at me, who wants to say something first?
I can start, perhaps,
you.
and then maybe Rosa brings more details also from the app use and the experiences there. But I think it's an excellent question, because we tend to develop strategies or initiatives for everybody to change the whole world. And then we don't know afterwards why it fails. It's because people are different and we are not personalizing our approaches. No? So if I'm engaging kids with something, or elderly people with something, or the youth, and I would even provoke the thought of separating people, or segmenting, as we say, groups according also to their behaviors or to their intentions. We tend to think about age, maybe gender, maybe how much people earn. And often these groups could be similar, or could be not, if they also have a similar intention. Or, for example, people are already intending to separate the waste, or people already eat less meat, or people already ride a bike. So we realize this ethnographic way of segmenting, as we say, separating or dividing groups according to their behavioral characteristics, could even be more promising than age or the more demographic separation. And I think concretely, this could mean maybe changing the wording or the language we use for maybe the name of the app, or how we invite them to come to an event, where we find them. If they use an app, or if they are not really technologically connected, maybe kids are not, maybe really elderly people are not, it really depends. So it would take you to go where they are, or visit the cafes or the leisure places where they are, and then could have then implications on your entry point, on the language you use, on the types of activities you want them to engage. But as soon as you realize you might have different groups, you need to understand that group a little better, and then thinking of, as I said, your wording, your entry point, in order to reach them and engage them.
Yeah, maybe I can add very shortly. Apart from that, of course, you need to have your engagement strategy targeting your different target groups. But also it's important the communications, as Mariana was mentioning, like the language you are using, or even the graphics, for example, that you saw on the app, to be inclusive. So if you want to have this gender approach, you need to have like equal representation, or these different types of age or ethnographic classification of people. You need to have, so people need to feel that they belong there. So this visual part also, and language that you are using is also important.
Wonderful. Well, I think this message of inclusivity can be the closing words for the webinar today. We're just about out of time, so I'd like to thank all of our speakers for your really excellent presentations and for your time today. As I said, we're going to share the slides to all the attendees. Also, we've recorded the webinar, so I'm sure it's going to be watched back by many people in the future. So just to close, I'd like to make a few words of promotion. So all of the tools and resources from the Hoop project have been uploaded in our dedicated online hub. You can sign up here and get access to lots of different tools and information and documentation also related to the topics of today and many other topics. Aside from that, like I said, we do still have some events coming up in the project. We're in the last few months, but now we have obviously a lot to share. So besides the event next week in Brussels, we also have an event later in June in the Netherlands. This is more on investment topics, on financing circular economies. So if you go to our website, you can find out more details about that event, should you be interested. And finally, in September, we're going to be heading to Norway to one of our lighthouse cities, Bergen, and they'll be hosting the final event of the HOOP project together with a study tour. That one, the registration is not yet open, but it will be soon. So if you follow our socials or keep visiting our website, then you'll find all the details for that one. So with that, I'm going to close the webinar today. So again, thank you to all of our speakers. Thanks for joining us today, and hopefully see you again soon. Bye-bye.